Gabriel, thank you for joining me.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Tell me, who is Gabriel Nussbaum?
Gabriel is a guy trying to change the way the topic of finance, in particular personal finance, is served in this country and, to be honest, in the entire world. And my mission has basically meant taking to social media, the place where most of the attention is going these days, and simply just trying to teach to make every individual viewer of any piece of content I put into the world better with money.
What a mission. And so needed, right? Because without making an overarching comment, it's a bit of a mess, the whole finances of the world, if you like.
Some people say it's a mess, some people just say it's non-existent. There literally is no formal standard of financial education. I mean, there might be some people that are disagreeing, but for the vast majority, especially in the UK, which is, the place I know, the place I grew up, personal finance is just off the curriculum, full stop.
Well, I believe it's actually on the curriculum. I've been saying on this program constantly, and to a recent interview with Louise Hill, who founded Go Henry, apparently is on the curriculum, but kids are coming out of school not being taught it. Where's the disconnect there? Because we all need to manage our finances. We all need to understand money, which is what you're actually doing in context of educating us on social media.
Yeah, so when you say it's on the curriculum, I think you're referring to, I don't know if this is going to kind of give anyone that kind of deja vu feeling, but PSHE, do you remember those lessons in
I
school?
do.
So I'm fairly certain that somewhere in that world, it's like the extra curriculum lessons we have here in the UK, finance falls into that. But like, if you actually take a look at the big picture, you're asking a teacher who's probably never learned anything about money, doesn't really understand personal finance themselves, to then go and teach a class full of students who are in that classroom environment where they probably aren't really interested in it. It's probably not that relevant to them at that point. They don't have any income coming in. They just want to mess about in that PSHE lesson. You can understand why maybe it's on the curriculum, but does that actually come to fruition? Yeah, I'm confident in saying absolutely not.
But what you do is make it relevant. So tell me how you've done that. And I want to know that journey from what was ultimately a corporate career to then actually having the light bulb moment and taking a risk, backing yourself to now be doing what you do.
I mean, the way that I'm doing it is just going where the attention is. So social media, you name any of half a dozen platforms at the moment. That's where not just young people are going. That's where everyone's going. That's where the people are spending their free time. I mean, TV is dying. Traditional media is dying in a way, and social media is the reason for that. It's plugging the gap. So the reason why I've gone and tried to teach personal finance through those platforms is for no other reason but that is where people are listening. And traditionally, like when I started back in the day, you asked me to go back to the start. I went on social media and it was pure entertainment. That is what lived on social media, especially when short form started to come into their eyes through, TikTok and Instagram Reels and all those kind of things. On long form, there was some level of education, digital education, and that was what I loved. I absolutely loved any form of education through YouTube, things that like you learn outside of the classroom. I was consuming that. And I got to the point where I was like, well, I've consumed enough of it. Why don't I actually produce it about a topic that I'm really passionate about? And you briefly alluded to the fact that I worked at Barclays. It was a graduate scheme. It was in the corporate world. I'd left engineering as a degree, gone to do that. And I was just like, I want to do something more with my time, something that has a bit of passion behind it. And so I started it purely as a hobby, literally as a hobby, bit of a weird one, but I just started making these little skits and educational videos about the topic of money. Anything that I was learning, I decided to teach.
Whilst still doing the corporate. So was there an overlap or did you have a
Side by
hard?
side,
Cool.
almost at the same
So it was a
time.
side hustle ultimately to start with.
Yeah, it was a side hustle. It was a side hustle that I didn't actually need to become a side hustle per se, because anyone that starts social media will tell you this. You start with 0 followers. And 0 followers means 0 level of income alongside of that. So I was doing it pretty much from day one of working at Barclays. I did them side by side. And about 12 months in, I was fairly certain that social media and financial education was going to be my future.
Was anyone inspiring you? So consuming all this content yourself, was there anyone that was kind of doing anything close to what you were doing? Or did you actually have the opposite? You're like, oh my God, there's a door wide open for me to go straight in here.
I think I take inspiration from like a lot of sources. So no one directly per se. I think if you look at the world of, let's say, social media in particular, one name that rings out is Ali Abdal. Quite a niche name if you don't watch YouTube, but he's like some ex-Cambridge doctor turned productivity entrepreneur. And I used to watch a lot of his content, and it was super inspiring, the fact that he'd taken this from 0 to essentially leaving medicine to become an educator through the internet. And that was kind of what sparked my brain to go, do you know what? There is a bit of a possibility of growing a future out of this, a career, a business, and also being able to make a tangible difference because he's made that tangible difference to me. When it comes to like the world of personal finance, I think that it was a gap, like you said, like it wasn't taught. No one had formally ever taught me personal finance. It was all self-taught. So I guess I was inspired by, your Richard Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dads, or your Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money. Those books, a little bit of that. Maybe sprinkle a bit of Martin Lewis on top because you see the incredible impact that he's making in the world, and especially in the UK. And I think if you mix all of those recipes together, that kind of just made me go, do you know what? I'll just give this a go.
Fair
Why
play
not?
to you. It's really entrepreneurial. And did you sort of pick up on a vibe from colleagues at Barclays and maybe your parents and so on, where like actually, to be doing the role you've done, you've gone the academic route, and yet actually Gen Z, I believe it's something like 92% now, Gen Z want to be an influencer. They want to be working within content creation one way or another. And you're doing that. But it's like that marriage of kind of leaving what you were doing with what sort of respected financial advice, if you like, to then going on to social platforms. But you've smashed it. Was anyone doubting you? Were you getting anyone sort of saying, what are you doing? Do you need a chat?
Yeah, a lot of people thought I had actually gone crazy. Not that I was doing it, but maybe like when I started to discuss that I was going to do that full time. I mean, bear in mind, like I come from a very traditional background in terms of I studied engineering, mechanical engineering, Imperial, 4 years, masters. Firstly, from the back of that, tell me one person that's gone into social media and, you know, it's probably just me pretty much alone. Then you go work at Barclays, you said a really stable career. And I loved it there, to be honest. I was having the best time on the graduate scheme. Um, and I never predicted that my future would be in the entrepreneurial world. I'm not like one of those kids that, they say, from the age of 7, I was selling sweets like in the back of the classroom. That wasn't me, to be honest. I was very set on the kind of corporate classic career. It was more just like the passion kind of found me. And we kind of, as it grew, I grew my love for it, realized that it was a career that was even available. Because I think that's another thing. A lot of people aren't even aware that something outside of the classic route is available
Which
if you just put
makes
in a
you an
little bit of
innovator.
effort.
You created an opportunity yourself by being curious.
Exactly.
You can feel the passion coming off of you when you're talking about it. Like you were happy doing what you're doing. Most people are running away from something. You would still be at Barclays now, going
Happily.
through a different trajectory.
Yeah, like I said, I loved it.
What was the moment for you, or was there one, or was it a series of moments where you had that 12 months where you sort of almost overlapped with the sort of side hustle to then go, I'm going to do this full time. What were you getting? What were the feedback you were getting? Was there a real moment where you were like, this is exactly why I'm going to do this?
It's all the little things, I think, for me, where you get that comment, someone sends you a DM, someone recognizes you in the street, but not just recognizes you, tells you the impact that you've made on them, like saying that, you know what, you were the first kind of voice of financial education I've ever had in my life. And I was like, whoa, that's serious. But I guess what was even more meaningful was when people I knew were telling me they were watching it and learning and making a difference. I had a friend will come up to me and be like, do you know what? I've decided to open an ISA. I didn't even know what an ISA was before that. For anyone that doesn't know, it's like a tax-free product that you can save or invest through. And I was like, people are actually not just watching, but taking action off the back of it. And I think that's when I kind of both felt the pressure of what I was doing because people were actually listening and taking action, but then also felt like the privilege that I was making a change in a field that I thought was unchangeable.
I love that. And fast forward to now, you have millions of followers across all the platforms. Is there one thing you've sort of almost found that you've probably helped people with? Is there, that sort of piece that was missing where just by you putting the content out that you've been doing, people come back and say, thank you?
For me, it's all about knocking over the first domino in the world of personal finance, being the first touch point to inspire someone. Because you bear in mind, like I do short form social mainly, which means that I have somewhere between 30 seconds and maybe 3 minutes to cover a topic, which isn't easy, especially when you're trying to teach something to do with money, which has some jargon involved, some complications, stuff like that. For me, all I really intend to do with anything that I put out into the world is spark a bit of interest for someone to watch that and go, oh, do you know what? It's not that difficult to maybe look at investing for the first time. Or maybe I should consider saving, even though I can't or didn't think I could afford to do it right now. But putting something small away might be the difference. Or perhaps it is time to actually look at how much I spent last month. All I want to do is knock over the first domino and let kind of inspiration and motivation take it from there. And if they come back to me and watch more videos and learn more things, great. And if they go in another route that allows them to kind of evolve their financial journey, absolutely fine with me.
I love that. Is there any one bit of feedback you're getting from people where they're getting it really wrong? Because people must pour out to you, so that by influencing people, they'll give you feedback, like the person on the street or your friends. But there are also potentially people that are going to come into you going, I wish I'd known that sooner, or the mistake statement. Is there one key thing that people are getting wrong with money?
99.99, add as many nines as you want percent of people say the same thing, which is I wish I started saving sooner. And it's such a vague one and just so generalized that I never really like refer to that one. So to give you an even more specific example, even though it's not like the majority of people, income tax is a topic that I cover here and there, just to kind of get people understanding what happens to your paycheck. Why, let's say you think you're earning £3,000 a month, why £3,000 doesn't land in your bank account after they take, everyone takes a little bit out of their HMRC and the rest of them. So I made a video simply explaining a breakdown basically of a paycheck. And half the comments were like, this is stupid, everyone knows this already. And half the comments were, I turned down a raise because I didn't want to go into a higher tax bracket because I thought it meant I would take home less money. And that got me realizing just how low the level of financial literacy in the country is, because people think it's obvious, right? And when everyone thinks it's obvious, it obviously isn't obvious. So I broke that down, and I think thousands of people have probably watched a piece of content of me explaining income tax. And thanks to that, will now take home more money because they're aware of the system. And it's crazy because that will affect every single person in this country.
That's a huge ripple effect.
And it's not a compulsory subject. Imagine not knowing how you're taxed, full stop. Mental.
That's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah.
The entrepreneurial side of things fascinates me. From someone that didn't aspire to be one, to was happy in what you were doing, to now have this huge following, millions of people. I want to know that that's sort of almost that confidence element where you're putting content out, which takes bravery to put yourself on camera, and it's all you. I've seen some awesome content where it's you and you having a conversation about income tax and so on.
Exactly.
Did you teach yourself? Did you sort of take a course in that?
Everything is self-taught.
Love that.
I say self-taught, but self-taught through mediums of learning, let's say through other social media creators. When I'm interested about something, a quick Google search will give you dozens of free resources on how to learn it. So I've taught myself, obviously, all the things you see on camera, how to present, how to digest, download complex things, and then teach it in a really simple to understand way. But also how to script, how to edit, how to film, how to use a camera properly, audio, all the technical things that come from behind the scenes. Like I was a one-man band for 3 years doing absolutely every element. For the first 6 months, how to negotiate, how to speak to a brand before I got my brand manager, who may or may not be sat behind the camera now, smiling away, being like, don't worry, I got you covered, Gabriel. But for the first 6 months, you do it yourself, right? So
Best way to learn though, right?
exactly. Probably made a lot of mistakes, but like
I was coming to that.
I love the mistakes.
But you can see in your face, you're
Yeah.
thriving, you're flourishing.
They're my favorite part.
What's been the most challenging part? Because interesting off camera, we were talking, you mentioned the engineering degree, but you haven't got the financial sort of qualifications if you like, but you're talking about money all the time. But that's not held you back from building a massive audience of relatable content. But through that sort of last 3-year journey, what were the hardest parts? What were the bits you struggled with?
I suppose it's probably more from like an entrepreneurial side where, like I said, I come from a traditional background, and without ever doing anything in the entrepreneurial world, you don't realize that there are cycles involved with it. And what I mean by that is literally from an income perspective. So when you're in business, cash flow is king, right? A lot of people say that. And I left my job. I took a risk. It was in the same month that I actually moved house and got married. I quit my job, and everyone thought I was absolutely nuts. And probably that was at a time when I was flying, but there was always going to come a period where things aren't going as well as the best they've ever been, right? Where perhaps no new business comes in for a couple of months, and you have to realize that, how do I evolve? How do I shift? And that's a muscle that you have to grow, I think, as an entrepreneur. It's just part and parcel. Because I'm now 4 years down the line, or 3 years down the line. I expect that. I know it's just part. I know that January is just a quiet month in business, right? Full stop. And I think that's probably the hardest part, the first couple of years, learning how to deal with that, how to manage cash flow from a business side. Like I said, there's so much more than you see is just like making videos and putting it on the internet. It's a whole business that I'm growing here. So that was really difficult. And then if I went right back to the beginning, and this will happen to anyone that puts a video on the internet, It was the association of my worth and my happiness with the view counts and the view rates. If a video did well, I felt amazing. I felt on top of the moon. If a video didn't do well, I was like, well, it was fun whilst it lasted, guys. I mean, like, let's call this a wrap and let's go home. Learning to disassociate numbers from any sense of value was the hardest but most important thing that I did as a content creator.
Is there one video that kind of almost, which I totally get, and you've got to avoid that dopamine hit of kind of likes and so on. But is there one video that you had a whole moment where like, oh, I'm onto something here. This has got people really talking and
To be honest, one video in particular, I can refer to that tax one, which went absolutely crazy. Back in the day, I liked to reveal different like hacks, money hacks, let's say, things in the system that people weren't aware of. And I remember about 3 years ago, I was on a flight and it got delayed. And I was speaking to people behind the desk and they're like, oh, take this, by the way, you're owed compensation because of the time that you've been delayed, the distance you're traveling. I was like, oh, like, you know, the 100 quid they offer you. They're like, no, 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 go online. There's a legal amount that we have to pay you because of what happened. And I was like, that's really interesting. It turned out to be 600 euros for being delayed like 4 hours. So I thought, let me look into this and let me make a piece of content about it. And I posted it, really raw, badly edited, probably didn't get to the point very well, but 10 million views. And you're thinking 10 million people are clearly interested and had no idea that this little rule actually exists where you have to get paid if certain things happen while traveling. So we're talking about like a piece of content that like flew, and I realized like there are things in the system that people just have no idea about. I only learned that because it happened to me.
lived experience.
Lived experience, great lived experience. I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah.
I didn't even mind the delay. They told me 600 euros was coming my way. I went, thank you very much.
I find it,
But those are like the little things that you put on the internet and you realize that just how much out there isn't taught and how much there is for me to cover.
and what would you say to someone, and I have this conversation with my daughters, 14 and 15 now, where they're surrounded by kids that don't want to put themselves out there. So when you first started talking about that experience, I thought you might have said you were going to be getting past the sort of the brave part of putting yourself out there, open for judgment. Didn't seem like that was ever a thing. I think you were prepared to back yourself, and you were sort of full of purpose with the content. But there are clearly people that struggle with it. Did you have any issues with that?
Yeah, I think it's impossible not to, because like I said at the start, if you ever putting stuff on the internet, no one's watching. My mindset now is if no one's watching, that's fine, because no one's watching, if you get what I'm saying. So there's no reason to even be worried because no one will end up seeing it. So therefore it's a great leap. And if everyone's seeing it, you've done very well. So well done, there's nothing to be worried about. But back at the start, theoretically, and probably if I actually try and like speak to that version of myself, yeah, there was concern. Like, I'm putting myself out there, right? I'm thinking that I'm doing something maybe cool and innovative and game changing and trying to make a difference. And I'm so confident there were people probably who know me or friends of a friend or someone that just like, what is he doing? Like, why is he making these silly little videos on the internet? Who does he think he is? But the important thing for me was my immediate circle were very supportive. Really, my mates, my wife, who was my fiance or my girlfriend at the time, my family, my siblings, my parents, they all like, that's really cool. Like, great video again. Like, you're doing really well. And that's all that mattered to me.
Surrounding yourself with the right people that support you.
Yeah.
Love that.
Don't get me wrong. If you put 5 of my mates in a circle at the start, absolutely took the me. Absolutely, like, took the mick. But then I knew one-on-one, they all texted me being like, great video.
I love that. And you backed yourself as well.
Yeah.
It's so clear you're enjoying ultimately the journey, right? I wonder is there like a destination? Because a lot of what you've been working on has been sort of testing and even kind of spontaneous, like this whole travel compensation, to then give you probably more of an insight to be more curious about other things you can share that other people don't know about. But it's got quite serious now. You know, you've been to number 10, you're sort of, you know, sort of more of a think tank element, right? And this has clearly unearthed a real need for it. Have you had a thought about where you're going with this?
Probably the scariest question you could ask me,
Oh,
because often people say like, what's the goal? Like, what are you doing here? What's the next 5 years look like? And I go, I have absolutely no idea.
I think it's working for you.
I'm kind of happy with it. I'm happy to know my 6-month plan, maybe my 1-year plan. But like, this landscape moves so quickly. This industry that I'm in of creating content is still in its infancy. That what it will look like in 2 years is going to be completely different from what it looks like today. So because of that, if you try and transcribe too much of what you want to do and what you want to become, I think it boxes you in. And I don't want to be in the position where I have to say no to opportunities because I've really funneled myself in a specific direction. So that's why I'm very open. I mean, if you think bigger picture, like my whole goal is just to make everyone better with money. That's the strapline, that's the mission. If it aligns with that, I say yes. If it doesn't align with that, I say no. So that's the overall key thing. 5 years time, absolutely no idea. But I'd love to keep, speaking to the people that can influence things. I mean, I've interviewed Keir Starmer now. I've interviewed Rachel Reeves, our Chancellor, twice. Insane opportunities. Speak to me 4 years ago, making my first video and putting it on the internet. So you're going to be interviewing the Chancellor. I interviewed the Governor of the Bank of England a month ago or 2 months ago. Like, these are the opportunities that are getting put in front of me. And I think all I'm kind of taking from that, instead of going, oh, like I've made it now, is that like I'm making a difference and I want to continue to make a difference.
So if you could influence or have a change of one key thing, and I think it's going to almost bring it back to that education piece, because that's awesome that you're getting an audience with the PM and the key people of decision making. But is there one piece that's broken or needs fixing that you really can highlight as something that needs the most attention?
Compulsory financial education. I think that is the missing piece. There are little pockets of it happening, but sometimes not with the best intention. So I'm not saying that, for example, the banks that do great work in schools trying to teach money have bad intentions, but ultimately, like, they know there's something in it for them, associating, with a name, and they're going in and they get to, open your junior account with us. And at the same time, I think there needs to be kind of, without any third party influence, some level of formal education. And I don't care if that's in primary school, in secondary school, at university, or when you start a career in that element. In fact, I do think it should be across all of them. But at any of those stages, I'll take that right
But
now.
surely the earlier the better, right?
Uh,
The whole there's a whole kind of scientific approach that a lot of habits are formed by the age of 7,
mhm.
and people aren't being taught
Money habits
the value of
included.
money by the age of 7. And actually, just that value of money interests me, right? So we're a cashless society now. My 14-year-old daughter, literally 2 days ago in birthday cards, still had some cash that came out. And it's the only time I see cash now, other than literally every now and again. And you and I are old enough to remember that we were parting with cash, we were paying with stuff. Now that we know all the benefits, totally get all the benefits of a cashless society. But do you think that going right back to kids literally right now that will not have that experience of cash, is it devaluing money?
I don't know if it's, I mean, it was definitely easier to teach it when you could feel it,
And
right?
count it literally, right?
One of my best, or probably one of the biggest lessons that I ever learned with money was from my grandma, who, whenever she gave me any money for a birthday or something like that, her rule was save half, spend half. And probably that's why I do what I do today, right? And why I'm so frugal,
But that
because
shows the influence,
that literal
that
influence from 5 years old,
matriarchal.
6 years old, 7 years old, telling me what to do with my money stuck, right? It stuck. And how many people don't have savings in this country? I think stats right now was 30% of the UK wouldn't be able to survive 1 month without a paycheck. So that was obviously instilled into me at such a young age. But removing cash is kind of inevitable now. I mean, there are laws coming in where they need to accept cash in some places and not. But we're moving into a cashless society, right? So I think it's just about keeping up with the times. You mentioned that you spoke to the founder, the CEO of GoHenry the other day, and they're doing an incredible job with kind of little debit cards built for kids. And a lot of companies are falling into this and trying to do this. And I think it's great. Because ultimately, if you turn 18 and all you know is how to manage cash, and then you realize that we're in a cashless society, it's like starting from zero all over again. So we might as well teach kids what's currently going on in the world.
I totally agree with that. I want to bring it back to you personally. So the sort of system needing fixing, and one size fits all is clearly a kind of a whole thing that needs attention. But you, as the entrepreneur, as you sit here now, there's all sorts of stuff that's talked about to be successful and to make a lot of money. You've got to get up at 4 a.m. You've got to run a marathon. You've got to read the book. You've got to meditate. Where do you fit with that? Because that's who you are now. You are a successful entrepreneur that is also a role model. I've watched some fabulous content that you put out and so on. So people will then be wanting to know that part of you. Where do you sit with that?
The behind the scenes. I
Yeah.
can tell you, I've never once woken up at 5 a.m. in my entire life. I do love the idea of it, don't get me wrong. I'm just not really great in the morning. I think the biggest thing about me behind the scenes is discipline and consistency, and kind of unwillingness to just not succeed.
Resilience.
Exactly. Learning about failure. I know I've thrown a lot of things out there, but it's not the meditate, wake up at 5 a.m., get to the gym 6 days a week, you know, read 100 pages, do the 75 hard challenge, which was like a crazy trend on social media. Those things are teaching you one thing overall, which is consistency and discipline. That's the only skill they're trying to teach you through those things that I think are worth like learning. So for me, what that looks like is I just don't stop. I just will keep going. It might not be on social media forever, but I will continue going for as long as I can. I created videos every day almost for 6 months with no one watching. And that is well below the average of how long it should take before someone does start watching. I think the average is around 2 years. For me, 6 months was very quick, but that's a long time
It's a
to
lonely
keep
time
going.
as well, right?
Yeah, with no success. But for me, like, it didn't matter because I just enjoyed the journey. So if you're talking about what's the thing, the entrepreneur that keeps me going and that sets me, let's say, apart, it's that I will just keep going. Failures are part of the journey. If you don't fail, you don't succeed.
Brilliant advice. And you can feel that, I'm going to call it happiness, without any arrogance or contentment, if you like. You are loving what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like if we sort of sat here for another 2 hours, you'd still be pouring out information with passion. So using that word happiness, money doesn't make you happy. It's thrown around a lot as a term, right? And it's probably all I've got time to ask is my last question. But what do you say to that? Because you're sitting here happy, and you talk about money. That is your key topic. So money doesn't make you happy.
Money buys opportunity and choices. Those are the things that make people happy. So the ability to be able to choose whether or not you're going to go out for a meal, to be able to choose what you're going to have for dinner that night, to choose what method of transport you want to use. Money is just a tool that opens that up for you. So people say, oh, money doesn't buy happiness, money doesn't buy happiness. To be honest, it does. Ask people in poverty. A bit of money would make them a lot happier. But the studies show that it's to a certain level. What that number is under huge debate at the moment, £85,000 a year, £100,000 a year. And to that I do agree with, because once you do get to a certain level, it's just about like, I can go on holiday, but I want to fly first, or, you know, flying economy. To me, that's the same level of happiness. You still get the opportunity to go on holiday. You still get to make that choice. So for me, I do think that money does buy happiness, but it's up to a level. Beyond that, happiness comes from the people around you, the things you do, the experiences you have in life, and not from the stuff. Stuff and things will never make you happy. I can promise you and say that out loud.
I love that. It's inspiring. It's like, I think purpose sits in us, doesn't it? You know, we will both know people that are successful and wealthy, but they're not happy. And then it's actually, you know, the lack of fulfillment, the lack of purpose. You know, you can go and buy another shiny watch, what have you, but is that going to make you happy? No, not that person. It's not going to change them at all. And I think that purpose you've got that just exudes from you is exciting. I'm really interested to see where you go and what you, because as you say, you don't know yourself, but you're going, you're shifting, you're moving, and it's been a pleasure talking to you today.
Yeah, it's been really fun. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
having
Gabriel.
me.
Thank
Cheers.
you.